Hey, I'm Mason King, host of the IBJ podcast. And before we get into this week's episode, I want to tell you about the newest podcast from IBJ Media called Off the Record with the Indiana 250. In each episode, IBJ Media CEO Nate Feldman talks with a different leader on the Indiana 250 list of the state's most influential leaders. They discuss their vision for Indiana's future, their experiences in business, and their advice for other aspiring entrepreneurs. New episodes are released on select Thursdays. So go subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform so you can never miss an episode. Just search the Indiana 250 Off the Record. Thanks. This is the IBJ podcast for the week of October the 30th, 2023, brought to you by Taft. I'm your host, Mason King. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. On occasion, we have guests on the podcast who don't need much of an introduction for local residents, and this is certainly one of them. Our guest this week is Debby Knox, certainly one of the longest tenured TV news anchors in Indiana history. She has been on the air in Indianapolis, with the exception of a short break, since 1980, when she joined Wish TV Channel 8. She worked as a reporter and anchor for 33 years until retiring in late 2013. As you likely know, it didn't stick. She soon was recruited to help launch the newscasts for CBS 4, which had taken over the city's CBS network affiliation from Wish TV. She was paired with veteran news anchor Bob Donaldson and meteorologist Chris Wright starting in January 2015. Earlier this month, she announced that her second stint in TV news would come to an end with her second shot at retirement, now set for November the 30th. The Michigan native will be 70 years old in February and has a long list of places around the globe she wants to visit when she isn't spending time with her granddaughter, now 18 months old. Still, she's a bit concerned, about being able to shake what she calls an addiction to breaking news. On this week's edition of the IBJ podcast, Knox takes the opportunity to share a wide-angle view of her career, including the most difficult and most rewarding days on the job. She shares stories from her interviews with world leaders such as Mikhail Gorbachev and Desmond Tutu. And she also discusses how TV news has changed over 4 decades and its value now in relation to all of the other available news sources. Here's our conversation. It's my pleasure to welcome to the podcast Debby Knox, news anchor for CBS 4 in Indianapolis. Thank you so much for taking time today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you and to talk with you on this podcast. And I've looked forward to spending the morning, at least a few minutes here with you. I think we'll have fun.
I want to start with a little thought experiment.
Okay.
We'll see how this goes.
All right.
I give listeners a sense of what it's like inside the head of somebody who has spent their entire career in local journalism.
Mm-hmm.
So here is the scenario. You are at home. You are not working. You're off of work. Maybe you're having a late dinner and you hear several sirens for emergency vehicles, probably a few blocks away.
Yeah.
Is your first response A, instinctively look for a notebook while thinking to yourself, that could be a good fire? B, call the station, make sure they know about it, and then see what they know about it. Or C, say, thank God I am not working right now. Now, all of those answers are correct. Where
Yes.
are you in the continuum?
I'd be still, even if I'm retired, I'm at both A and B on that one. I have stopped at accidents when I'm off duty and pulled out my little notepad and see if I can take notes. A lot of cops won't talk to you in the middle of that, but I'll try. And I will call this. I'd call this. I mean, it's so much in my blood. I don't think I can not do that immediately. That's been something that I've thought about. It's like, how am I going to transition to this kind of whole different weird, not being on top of things, especially breaking news stories like that. So that's going to take a little thought and, and I guess patience with myself to shift out of that mode. But it's going to be tough because my first instinct has been for years to, if it's happening, go to it. So I'll see how that goes. I'll let you know. Yeah.
So we'll address the sense of deja vu in the room. This is not the first time that you have attempted to retire.
That's right.
What did you learn about yourself back in, was it 2013, 2014?
Yeah. But, I had worked at Wish for 33 years and I was tired. I had been working there 33 years. So it wasn't like I just quit after a few months or something. So I decided to say, well, I'll just say goodbye. And I thought, well, I'll just, naively, I can just live on my 401k for the rest of my days and everything's going to be just peachy. So that's what I did. So I just decided I'll just preemptively get ahead of the game, not put myself in a place where might be embarrassed. So I just went ahead and said, okay, time to go. I get it.
And explain to us again, how is it that you ended up on CBS 4?
Well, after I retired, that was during 2014. Basically, I was the day that I learned that Wish had lost the CBS affiliation. I was up in Chicago and I was helping my son move into an apartment. And he was in law school at the time. And I got a phone call from Mark Patrick, who I'd worked with at Wish. And he's been on Q95 and the Hoosier Lottery Show and all this other stuff. And he said, "Hey, guess what happened?" I said, "What?" And he said, "Wish lost the affiliation. It looks like it's going to WTTV, Channel 4. And I went, "Oh, that's interesting." A couple weeks later, I get a DM from Bob Donaldson. And he said, "Hey, would you be interested in taking a meeting with the news director at Fox 59 and soon to be CBS 4? And I said, "I'll always take the meeting, always take a meeting and see what happens." I had a non-compete, that was in place. So I knew I wasn't going to be going anywhere immediately. So it just sort of went from there. We sat down and I talked with Carrie Kavanaugh at the time, and she realized that I had more time, that I could not be on the air. They didn't go on the air officially until January 1st of 2015. So that's how it kind of came to be. I had time to rest. I'd had time to kind of, just think, and thought, well, I think I still got something to give here. It's a different kind of environment. I thought it's still in the same town where my family is and everything is. So it seemed like it might be a good change for me. So that's what happened.
And so you end up staying almost 10 years?
Yeah, 8 years. 8 years. Okay. From 2015 to November 30th of 2023. So yeah.
Was it what you wanted it to be?
Yeah. I always kind of wish through COVID, you almost you couldn't almost do stories anymore. It all had to be Zooms and it was just difficult because there were people moving around. You didn't have access, I would have liked to have spent that time doing more reporting during the COVID time, but it was very difficult. So yeah, but I think generally to get in with a station at the ground level, which is kind of what we were doing at that point with CBS. TTV has been around for a long time, but getting this thing going with a CBS affiliation was a challenge, and it's been pretty cool to watch it. It's, we're not number one, but in the short amount of time that we've been on the air, we've done pretty darn well. And I think a great strength for Fox 59 because we are partners. We're owned by the same company. So it's been fun to see different photographers, different reporters that I'd watched for a long time, like Russ McQuaid, Bob Donaldson, all these folks that I'd known. So it was just kind of fun to be in a different environment and see how it works.
So take me to your latest decision. Why have you decided now's the time to retire for sure?
Well, hey, bottom line is I'm going to be 70 in February. When I got into this business, I didn't think I was going to last past 40. I mean, I thought, okay, back in the day, it was like, okay, you're going to maybe last till 40, 45, and then you'll be kind of on your way out. And that didn't go that way. So, but I'm looking at 70 now. And I'm also have a 18-month-old granddaughter who is just a barrel of fun, and I absolutely enjoy seeing her every day that I can see her. And I really do want to do some other projects. I like to collaborate with some other folks, the opportunities that might come along, and travel a bit and do all that kind of stuff, and shift back into something that would be, kind of fun, but, keep me kind of a little bit of a finger in it, but not full time by any means. So we'll see.
Here's a giant question for you. So you mentioned you started in 1980 at Wish.
Yep.
How is being a TV newscaster and anchor the same as it was 42 years ago? And then, of course, I'm going to ask how it's different. But I mean, do you think that there's still elements of it that are basically the same?
Yeah, people, it's still a newscast, and there's a lot of talk, and there has been a lot of talk about that sort of diminishing and going by the wayside, and your viewer demographics are changing and that sort of thing. So a newscast is generally newscast. We have different bells and whistles and different size monitors and better lighting, and there's robotic cameras and everything, and there's some upgrades and certainly that's all happened, and it's the same. It's obviously different, which you're going to get to, is the whole digital side of it. When I started out in the business, I was editing on film. Back in the day at WSJV, back in Elkhart South Bend market, which I was in the beginning, I was editing film. I was actually cutting film and taping it and doing whatever you have to do. And now it's all, Lord, you've got to know how to code in order to get video into a system, out of a system, access it. It's just a whole different ballgame. So that's the big change.
I would assume it is faster, like what we do in print journalism.
Yeah.
I mean, this difference in speed is like, the Wright brothers versus, the Concorde.
Yes, absolutely true. Absolutely true. It's got to be now. It's got to be on the website. It's got to be, you got to be tuned into that all the time. The pace of it, you're right about that, is absolutely increased. That's absolutely true compared to back in the day. Is
that a good thing, bad thing?
Well, it cuts both ways. You can get information out there. You got to be careful, obviously, that it's not misleading or misinformation. And I'm just, we need to, I think our industry really has to talk a lot about the dangers of misinformation. And that's a whole nother discussion, but it worries me. So yeah, I think it's important because people have their phones just like we're talking on. They want to know what's going on immediately, but there's inherent dangers and all that too. It scares me. It scares me a bit. It scares me about what's going on.
Given all the new sources of information that people have, like, obviously, when I was a kid and I was watching you, and all the folks back then, I delivered an afternoon newspaper, and then I would come home and I would watch the news. So I had two sources of information. Now I have about 5,000 sources of information.
Exactly.
Has that changed the role of, you think, of a TV newscast, or the value of a TV newscast?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's very, we both know. I mean, you're going on at 5 o'clock. Who's going to wait until 5 o'clock to get their news anymore? Nobody, none of us, and but it also can be the information of record if we're careful, and we make sure that we're as reliable and our information is as straightforward as it can be. So I like all of it. I like the fastness of it. I have to admit, I'm checking my phone all the time like everybody else, but I also like the newscaster record of the day to kind of get a summary of everything. And then I love things like 60 Minutes that are like long story, well told, well edited pieces that just feel good when you listen to them and you hear what's being said. And even at CBS 4, we got some phenomenal people that can do that. So I like it all. It's a huge menu. You can pick and choose. There's no one way, but it's once you get into news, you have to admit it's like you can't get away from it. It's like an addiction, and you just can't let it go. And that's my biggest fear about retiring, to be quite frank, is I got it. I got it. It fades. So help me. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be good. It's all going to be good. It's all going to be good.
What are you telling the young people that are coming into the business right now? Are you hearing from them that they're afraid that this won't be here in 10 years? Or what kind of take do you have for them on what they need to be doing in their careers?
That they need to work for themselves. And that means, make sure all your skills are in place for editing and all that sort of thing. But man, also just have a curiosity about the world. Have you ever worked around people that, they work and they kind of go through the motions and, but it's like, man, if you don't have this kind of passion for finding information, helping people understand the world, then it's probably not going to be a good fit, because that's still there and it's needed now, I think, as much as any time. So if you have this passion, and I see people with it, I also see people that don't have it. You need to have that desire to immerse yourself and to really understand what you're doing and who you're reporting on, and get behind the scenes, keep digging, find out information, but also keep your technical skills up, because let's face it, digital is digital, and it is, it's important, and it's where things are going. So you gotta be a worker bee. You really have to be a worker bee on every level, and you gotta love it.
What was it when you were growing up that made you want to be a journalist?
Well, I lived, my dad was a doc, and he was practicing in a small town up there, and it was a small town. It was a cute little Edwardsburg, but nothing was going on. And it used to, as a kid, I remember as a kid wanting to know more about the world at a fairly young age, like middle school. I wanted to hear more about it. My dad would get my parents would get the South Bend Tribune and the Elkhart Truth, and I'd kind of look through it and start, but it was kind of, at that point, I knew what I didn't know a lot. So I wanted to learn more. And I knew that journalism was a way to learn more about the world. And so I got real interested in it, and at that age, really.
Okay, let's take a quick break so we can hear from our sponsor. This is the IBJ podcast.
Taft, today's modern law firm. With more than 800 attorneys in 8 primary Midwest markets and the District of Columbia, we provide solutions to the business issues facing middle market and emerging companies alike. We do this through a highly collaborative and inclusive team approach. Taft, the modern law firm. To learn more, visit taftlaw.com.
All right, we're back with this week's edition of the IBJ podcast and my interview with Indianapolis newscasting legend, Debby Knox. Had you not been a journalist, what would you have been?
Oh, God. Oh, geez. I don't know. I know my parents would have liked for me to go on into medical school, but I couldn't hack that. I couldn't do that. I'm not absolutely sure. I don't know. I just love this. I can't imagine doing, God, business is a whole nother layer of, I know that I would love to do more. I would love to learn more about politics. I would love to learn more about history, maybe more academic stuff, history and that sort of thing. I probably would have gone back to school and maybe gotten a master's or PhD or something, and maybe at that level, because the quest to learn more has just been with me for a long time. So maybe something in that direction.
What can you not do because you're a TV journalist and a public figure? For example, I cannot have yard signs. I can't express any opinion about any news, any kind of news event or issue. However, I can go anywhere in the city and nobody cares who I am. I don't know if you have the same
right
experience.
I'm in the same boat. I would never have a yard sign. I have not contributed to any political parties. Would never do that. Have never voted in a primary. I vote in general elections, all that sort of thing. And our newscasts are pretty much straight ahead, kind of the news of the day. We don't do opinion and that sort of thing. And so I just, make sure even in social media, I try to general, what CBS 4 is covering the day of. We do a lot of crimey things, and so that gets posted. But yeah, you have to be very, very careful about that. And I'm in the same boat you are. You just don't go there.
Yeah. I mean, is there something that you are now looking forward to being able to do?
Yeah, I would like to know, I think with the 2024 elections coming up, and I listen to a lot of things, and just I would like to be more involved in making sure, how do I say this? I would like to be helpful. And maybe, if I say anything, it's going to sound like I want to get involved in politics necessarily, but I guess I want to be more, and maybe be work at the polls, or kind of bring my civic duty up to speed here so that I can be helpful. I don't want to jump on anybody's bandwagon and get people riled up, but to be helpful in our democracy, I guess, and in our civic duty. I hope that I can do some of that, at some level. I haven't figured it all out, but I feel like there's hopefully that there might be a place for me to be. So, but right now that's not happening, not till I'm done with work.
Over your whole career in Indianapolis, what was the most difficult day to be a local newscaster?
Probably 9/11, because that shook me to the core. That was like a Pearl Harbor moment for all of us. And we all knew where we were at the time and that sort of thing. I had 2 young children. You just did the watching what was unfolding on TV that morning. And then, actually, it's just the news coverage was just, it was unbelievable at the time. So I would have to say that COVID was pretty scary too, especially, kind of figuring out, what you could and couldn't do and how to stay safe. And again, being careful about information. But I'd have to say 9/11, and it, I've been to the site now numerous times. I didn't cover it when it was happening, but that shook me to my core. It was a pretty stunning day, Locally, it was unbelievable. I don't know if you covered this back in the 80s. We had that fighter jet that went into the hotel out by the airport.
Right.
That was a heck of a breaking news moment. I think 7 or 8 people killed in that, and Bob Knight being fired. That was huge. I mean, that was just absolutely huge. The Colts coming to town, huge. Reggie Miller playing in those playoff games, and Butler having that great, time at 2010 and 2011. So all those things were just standouts for me. So,
is there one day that stays out as the greatest day? I mean, it could have been somebody you were interviewing, or you're like, man, we got that story.
Yeah, just real quickly. Yeah. So back number of years ago, this is when I was, of course, at Wish TV, I got word that Nobel winner Archbishop Desmond Tutu was going to come to Indianapolis. So this is before, emails and all this other stuff. So I attempted to get a hold of him in South Africa because I knew he was going to be in Indianapolis. I thought, this would be really cool to get him. This is very early on. So never heard back, called his secretary, and never made contact with him. I said, okay, he's coming to Indy. There's no chance I'm going to get him. It'd just be cool to say that I interviewed, Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And so he got to Indianapolis, went to the convention center, gave a speech. And then there was this little adjunct room where all the media was and everything. We're all standing. I went to that. I thought, well, heck, I'm going to at least see what he says. And he was a tiny man.
Yeah.
And very, it was just really cool guy. And he walked in and he took a few questions from ABC and NBC, and the networks were all covering him at that point. And at the end, he said, "Is Debby Knox here?" And I was shocked, and I got access. I did a personal interview with him. Now, this is before I would have taken pictures and all sorts of stuff. I didn't, So I got to do it was an interview with him, and I was so emotionally tied up. I was almost tearful when I was interviewing. I mean, I was just nervous, but that was kind of a cool moment to get him, and to think that he actually circled back and remembered that I wanted to talk to him. Yeah. So I enjoyed that day. That was the day. And then, just crazy stuff. I've interviewed President Obama at the White House, and when he was a candidate, and I interviewed, I didn't interview Bob Knight. He did a wonderful favor for me, but Brad Stevens, I did an interview with, and there's a whole other story of that. But anyway, you may not want to know all this. There's been a lot of fun interviews I've gotten to do over the years, including Sammy Davis up over in Bosnia when the Indian National Guard was over there, and Suzanne Mubarak, First Lady of Egypt. I got to interview her. It was kind of an interview because the Children's Museum was involved with the building of a children's museum at the time in Egypt, and so I got to interview her. So anyway, it was interesting. I've done some fun stuff. All of it very interesting to me.
I want to go back real quick because I'd forgotten to ask you about this. Mikhail Gorbachev.
Oh, Yeah.
You
Right.
interviewed Mikhail Gorbachev.
I did.
Tell me that story. I've heard the story, but I'm not sure I've heard it from you.
Yeah. So the connection to Mikhail Gorbachev was actually Diane Meyer Simon, who was then the wife of Herb Simon, and she went to Butler University. And she was involved in a Green Cross, I believe it was, that he was starting up after he left Russia, or being the head of Russia. So I knew Diane, and she said, "Well, hey, Herb and I are going to host Mikhail Gorbachev out in California." So I said, "Really?" She says, "I think I could get an interview I think I could make a connection for you." And I thought, well, okay. So me and my photographer, Jim Hester, went out to Beverly Hills, chased Mikhail Gorbachev all over the place with big goose egg interview. Nothing. It was during the O.J. Simpson trial. So we drove over by the O.J. Simpson, the house where the murders happened. And it was just, anyway, so that I didn't get what I wanted. I got an interview with Diane, but I wanted Mikhail Gorbachev. So anyway, months or a year or so, whenever later, Diane got Mikhail to come to Butler University. And I thought, gosh darn it, I'm going to go after this again and redeem myself, So I got an interview with him here in Indianapolis, and interviewed him downtown. And he had his translator with him. So it was a very slow interview. And I wanted him more to talk about the connections, more to, the Simon family and Indianapolis, if there was any. And, but he wanted to talk about some of the issues that he was involved in. So I would say it was an okay interview. I'd give myself about a B minus on it, only because I felt like I was going to get more. But through the translator, it was a very slow interview. And he kind of, like a lot of politicians, they want to talk what they want to talk about. So, but it was cool to meet him.
I thought he was a pretty good English speaker.
He is, but he wouldn't do it with me. He wouldn't do it. No, I had a camera. He doesn't, so I had a camera. I was going to, we were there to interview him, and he did agree to sit down, but his translator translated for him. So he's a fascinating guy. I'm glad I got to speak with him, but, I wanted more, but I understand now how these things work a little bit better. So, it's not exactly, they want to bare their soul to Debby Knox, they got their own things too, but he's an interesting, fascinating guy,
When is your last day?
November 30th. And I will be done at 6:30 at night there. I'm not going to do the 11 o'clock that night. I'll do 6 to 6:30. So
what are the plans immediately after?
There's going to be a little retirement party, I think, December, in early December, but I don't know. It might be just going over to Gatsby's or something close by and giving everybody a hug and a kiss and love you all and encourage people and, just be so thankful for the opportunity I've had here. I've really had a wonderful career here. I'm very happy about it. So for the most part, it's all good.
You probably get asked to be on boards of directors for local organizations or to serve local not-for-profits in some way. Have you been approached by anybody?
Yeah, I have. And I've not. Yeah, I have. And it's, again, that kind of gets into the politics of stuff and how you can cover. So I've had a couple of invitations and sort of said, nah, I don't think so. So I'm good. Wanted to kind of stay out of that, but who knows what'll happen now? I don't know if I'm not.
Oh, yeah. So you haven't made any commitments for the future?
No, no, not like that. No.
Okay. Now I know you want to travel. Give me your top 3 destinations.
Yeah. Well, I've got a trip that is planned, and I'm going with the Butler Choir down to South America in May of 2024. Yeah, I know.
What?
The guy I know. I know. It's a whole. Eric Stark is the guy that heads this up, and he is putting it together. And so I jumped on board. So my partner and I we're gonna go to South America toward the end of May. I'm gonna go to England in the first week of February. I've got a friend who's got a flat over there, and we're going to meet some friends for just a short time. I want to celebrate my career with my family, maybe out in Colorado in early March. That's still sort of in the planning phases, but I'd love to go to the Far East. I'd like to see love to go to New Zealand and Australia, but also Japan and some of the countries over there. I'd like to go to Poland. I do want to I want to go see. I have this weird, not weird, but I want to know more about history and what happened, go to Auschwitz, make a pilgrimage there, I guess. It's that's just want to, I think I need to see that. So yeah, I thought those are some of the things I want to do. It's just, I love France. I know I'll go back to France. I have friends in the UK. I know at some point go over there. So, but it's, I'm going to take it as it comes. And those are on the horizon at this point.
When you retired from Wish, what was that last day like?
That was boy, I got a great send off. God, they were kind. They really were. They went all out. I had a little party at the station, and people were invited, and it was it was a very nice send off, and they were kind to me and wonderful, and all the people there, and people from other stations came and said goodbye and that sort of thing. And that was where I was going. And so it was very nice. And I ended up getting together a couple of times with some of the people in, production and, the creative services department, and just chatted it up and drank some champagne and said, okay, see ya. And then that was the end. I thought that was the end. So anyway,
right.
It worked out okay.
Well, I wish you the best
Thank you.
retirement and safe travels. And hopefully we will have reason to connect again. We have something exciting going on in the future.
Hey, I'm all about that, and I'll let you know, and I'll continue to tune into your pod. Keep it going. You're doing a good job. You really are. Okay. Well, I'm learning more now than, especially the business side. It's been great to hear. So, all right.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Mason, take care. It's nice talking to you.
My thanks again to Debby Knox. And folks, before you get on with the rest of your week, there are a few stories in the latest issue of IBJ I want to draw to your attention. First up, for 4 months, the southwestern quadrant of Monument Circle has been closed to traffic in favor of hosting a temporary park intended to make downtown more comfortable for residents, workers, and visitors. But Taylor Wooten reports that nearby businesses are split on whether Spark on the Circle is worth continuing. Also in this week's issue, John Russell reports on the growing use of therapy dogs in hospitals around central Indiana to reduce patient stress and help in the healing process. And Daniel Bradley details plans for the $250 million Grand Universe Science and Space Experience Campus in Westfield. And again, you can find these stories in the latest print edition of IBJ or online at ibj.com. And thanks again for making time this week for the IBJ podcast. I'm Mason King. Hang in there, everybody. We'll be back again next week.